Every night, millions of people face monsters, not under the bed, but trapped within their own minds. For some, these nightmares are more than just fleeting scares. Nightmare disorder affects about 2% to 5% of adults, turning sleep into a nightly struggle. In one study, a veteran described reliving the same battlefield over and over, waking up drenched in sweat and unable to shake the terror. The true cost of nightmares goes far beyond a restless night. Studies show chronic nightmares can quadruple the risk of suicide reattempts in high-risk groups. They disrupt sleep, fuel anxiety, and bleed into waking life. Most people think nightmares fade with the morning light, but what happens when they refuse to let go? When nightmares cross the line? For some people, nightmares develop a pattern that begins to shape their entire experience of sleep. They don't just wake up unsettled, they anticipate the dread before they even close their eyes, knowing the same disturbing images will return. These aren't the fleeting bad dreams that disappear with the sunrise. Instead, each night brings a repeat performance, and the fear spills over into the next day. Simple routines like turning out the lights or lying down can become loaded with anxiety. The boundary between night and day blurs as the emotional residue from these dreams lingers, making restful sleep feel impossible. Nightmares that persist in this way are not just a byproduct of an overactive imagination. Many report daytime fatigue and impaired emotion regulation linked to disturbed sleep. It's common to see people struggling with exhaustion, not because they stayed up late, but because sleep itself has become a source of stress. They might avoid certain places or situations that echo the content of their nightmares, and the smallest reminders can trigger a wave of unease. In some cases, every detail from the dream remains vivid enough to influence their choices and moods long after waking. Consider Mara, who started having nightmares about falling after a particularly stressful period at work. Every night she'd jolt awake, heart racing, sweat on her brow. The dreams left her so shaken that she found it hard to concentrate at her job and became irritable with friends. The emotional impact didn't stop when the alarm went off. It colored her entire day, making her feel on edge and disconnected. The consequences of frequent nightmares reach far beyond the night. Disturbed sleep can lead to problems with emotion regulation and mental health during the day. People often experience irritability, trouble focusing, and a constant sense of fatigue. The cycle can become self-perpetuating. Nightmares disrupt sleep, which increases anxiety and makes it even harder to rest the next night. Over time, this can manifest as chronic insomnia, mood swings, and even panic attacks. The lines between dream and reality blur further as people wake up already depleted, their energy drained by the nightly struggle. Nightmare disorder doesn't just affect sleep. It can unravel a person's sense of safety and stability. Many people start to change their routines, developing rituals to avoid triggers that remind them of their dreams. They may avoid conversations or activities that could bring up the content of their nightmares, and their social lives contract as a result. The distress these dreams cause is real enough that sleep specialists and psychologists treat nightmare disorder as a serious medical issue, not just a quirk of imagination. There's another layer to this problem. For some, nightmares are less about fantastical monsters and more about the mind's attempt to process overwhelming emotions. Experts like Dr. Leslie Ellis suggest that nightmares can act as warning signals, messages from the subconscious that something isn't being resolved during waking hours. When these emotional signals go unaddressed, the dreams intensify, sometimes becoming so severe that they contribute to the development of anxiety disorders or depression. The emotional fallout from these dreams can make it difficult to separate what's happening in the mind from what's happening in daily life. What's clear is that when nightmares cross the line into disorder, their impact doesn't stop with the end of the dream. The effects ripple outward, changing how people think, act, and relate to the world around them. The real danger is not just the content of the dreams themselves, but the way they can erode a person's mental resilience over time. And for some, the consequences can be even more severe, raising urgent questions about the hidden toll nightmares can take on our waking lives. The hidden toll: how nightmares threaten our waking lives. Some dreams leave a mark that lingers well into the afternoon, shaping the mood and choices of the day. The hidden toll of nightmares is not just about what happens at night, but how those experiences bleed into waking life, shifting the way people think and feel long after the dream ends. When nightmares are relentless, returning night after night, they can change the brain's ability to recover from stress and undermine the body's natural defenses. For people who have survived trauma, the impact can be especially severe. In one study of patients post-suicide attempt, frequent trauma-related nightmares were linked to a 4-fold increase in reattempt rates. This isn't an isolated finding. Researchers have tracked these outcomes in real clinical settings, showing that for some, sleep transforms from a place of refuge to a source of dread. Instead of rest, the night brings a replay of past terror, and the mind never fully escapes the memory. The fallout from these dreams is immediate. After a night spent reliving a car crash or running from danger, people often wake up with anxiety humming beneath the surface. Emotional reactions become unpredictable. Small irritations can trigger outsized responses, and it's harder to recover from setbacks. Studies consistently show that frequent nightmares are linked to problems with impulse control, memory, and attention. The combination of disturbed sleep and emotional distress makes it difficult to handle the ordinary stress of daily life. There's also a physical side to this story. Research from Mader and colleagues found that people who have frequent nightmares often show lower parasympathetic activity during REM sleep, a state that should be restorative. This physiological change correlates with higher anxiety levels the next day. The body remains on alert, never fully relaxing, and the mind stays stuck in a cycle of tension and fatigue. The consequences are not just emotional. Chronic nightmares, especially those linked to trauma, can lead to increased impulsivity. For some, this means snapping at a coworker or withdrawing from friends. For others, it can escalate to self-harm or other risky behaviors. In clinical samples, people with recurring nightmares are far more likely to attempt suicide again compared to those with other sleep problems or none at all. The numbers are clear. These dreams are not just unpleasant, they are dangerous. Aaron's story is a familiar one in sleep clinics. After surviving a car accident, he found that every night brought the same crash, vivid and inescapable. The days became harder. He struggled to focus at work, avoided driving, and grew distant from friends. The exhaustion and anxiety built up, making it harder to manage even simple tasks. "Sleep isn't safe anymore," he said, echoing the words of many who live with trauma-linked nightmares. Dr. Wesley Youngren's research highlights the unique risk posed by trauma-related nightmares. His study of over 3,500 veterans with a history of suicide attempts found that nightmares rooted in real traumatic events predicted a much higher risk of another attempt. The distinction matters. Nightmares that replay actual trauma have a heavier impact than random bad dreams. Dr. Youngren points out that the disturbed sleep caused by these nightmares leads to increased impulsivity and impaired emotional regulation. Over time, the brain's ability to manage stress and recover from setbacks erodes, making each day feel more difficult than the last. PTSD nightmares are especially damaging. Unlike ordinary bad dreams, they replay trauma with brutal clarity, offering no escape or relief. Sleep, instead of healing, becomes another battleground. The anticipation of another nightmare creates dread, which disrupts sleep even further. With less and less rest, people become more vulnerable to anxiety and depression during the day. This cycle of nightmares and sleep loss erodes coping reserves, making it harder to function and increasing the risk of serious mental health consequences. These effects don't stay hidden. Nightmares show up in daily life. Short tempers, withdrawal from others, missed obligations, and risky decisions. They chip away at the mind's defenses, making it more likely that someone might act on desperate thoughts. The question that remains is why some people are so deeply affected by nightmares, while others seem to recover quickly. What is it about certain minds that makes them more vulnerable to the darkness that dreams can bring? Why some minds invite the darkness? Some minds seem to hold on to fear more tightly than others, especially when it comes to dreams. It isn't just about what happens during sleep, but how the brain stores and processes emotion. While some people can wake from a nightmare and move on, others find the boundary between waking and dreaming much thinner. For them, nightmares aren't just fleeting. They're detailed, persistent, and sometimes expected. This difference raises questions about what makes a mind more prone to troubled dreams. Research links higher neuroticism and worry to greater nightmare proneness. People with these traits tend to ruminate, feel distress easily, and struggle to let go of anxious thoughts. Dr. William Kelly has studied this connection, finding that those who wake up anxious or sad are often the same people whose sleep becomes a stage for their deepest fears. According to Kelly, this vulnerability is tied to increased activation of fear memories and negative emotions during sleep. The mind doesn't switch off when the lights go out. For individuals high in neuroticism, falling asleep can mean stepping back into unresolved worries and emotional tension. Another factor is the concept of thin psychological boundaries. Kelly suggests those with thin boundaries experience more bleeding of daily fears into dreams. Instead of a firm wall between waking life and dreams, these individuals have a curtain that lets concerns slip through. It might be a minor slight at work, a tense conversation, or something more serious, loss, betrayal, or regret. When psychological defenses are less robust, the mind is more permeable, and waking anxieties can easily become dream content. This helps explain why some people not only have more nightmares, but also feel them more intensely and personally. Nightmares often borrow material from real life, but the translation isn't always direct. Kelly's research shows that conflict, rejection, or loss in waking life can appear in dreams as distorted or symbolic scenarios. A breakup might show up as being stranded or searching for something you can't find. An argument with family could turn into a frantic chase or a feeling of falling with no one to help. The events may be disguised, but the underlying emotion is familiar. Nightmares take logical fears and give them new life as unsettling images, making the distress hard to ignore. Kelly argues vague anxieties undergo concretization. Ambiguous fears become vivid dream images. The mind dislikes uncertainty, especially when it comes to fear. During sleep, abstract worries take on concrete forms: a locked door, a collapsing bridge, a shadow in the hallway. This process can make nightmares feel more real and immediate. Instead of confusion, the dreamer faces a scene or threat that demands a reaction, even while asleep. Some people also recall their dreams with unusual clarity. High dream recall means not just remembering a dream, but experiencing its emotions, sounds, and images long after waking. For these individuals, nightmares can become recurring, with similar themes or scenarios playing out night after night. This isn't just exhausting, it's overwhelming, as the mind keeps these experiences alive and accessible. Instead of fading away, the nightmare's impact lingers, shaping mood and behavior throughout the day. Nightmares rarely appear without a reason. Dr. Zadra and others have pointed out that dreams often reflect ongoing worries, even if the imagery seems strange or disconnected. The mind uses symbols and metaphors to process unresolved issues, stress at work, relationship insecurity, or lingering doubts. Nightmares become a spotlight, illuminating the places where someone feels most vulnerable, even when the dream itself is bizarre or surreal. All these factors, personality traits, thin boundaries, high dream recall, and the mind's way of shaping fear, combine to make some people more susceptible to nightmares. Their experiences are woven into the structure of their sleep, and the fears they face at night are often the same ones they struggle with during the day. The result can feel inescapable, but understanding these patterns is the first step toward change. Nightmares may seem relentless, but there are ways to interrupt the cycle and regain control. For those who feel trapped by recurring dreams, the next step is to look at what can be done to rewrite the story of sleep and finally find relief. After all, nightmares can feel like an unbreakable pattern, but research shows there are ways to change how the mind responds to them. Imagery Rehearsal Therapy, IRT, is one such approach, where people choose a distressing dream, alter its details, and practice the new version while awake. Clinical guidelines recommend IRT for PTSD-related nightmares, and studies show it brings small to moderate reductions in nightmare frequency. In some cases, just 1 or 2 sessions can drop nightmare distress by 60%. Medications like prazosin can also help with PTSD nightmares, though symptoms often return once the drug is stopped. Gaining mastery over dream content is possible. As Antonio Zadra notes, people who practice these techniques often report feeling less helpless and more in control of their sleep. If nightmares persist, talk to a qualified professional. It's not just dream work, it's evidence-based treatment.